Thank you very much for joining me today for a conversation with Matthew Sandstead of Hayden Fox.
Yes.
We're going to be taking a journey through the new Places EP, which begins with the song Places, which we can hear, ends with Decimal, which asserts that decimal placement says everything. So that last song gets me thinking about this first song in a different light. Is that a coincidence?
Well, there is kind of a cyclical vibe to it. When we were planning out all of the structure of the EP, some of those lyrical tie-ins and even just kind of like the cadence of how it is and how it like can wrap back around to the beginning was that was intentional, to a degree.
You said we. Who, according to the website, which Austin is working on, the band seems to consist of Matthew Manoff, which is an off banana, and and Gambit, which is a movie.
Brian Nanoff is he's the.
That is his last name.
Yeah, Brian Nanoff is, that's his last name. We call him Nanoff, but it's Brian Nanoff. Gambit Meeks. Gambit's the drummer. The whole website for us was, the concept when I came to Austin with it was like, I want to make like a really cheesy like GeoCities like first band page ever kind of thing, and just have fun with that. So like everything you click on there goes to like links, and some of them are just kind of like stream of consciousness kind of links, like it's only loosely associated, So like, because his name is actually Gambit, like we link to the movie that's coming out, like Channing Tatum, whatever, and it's like
exactly.
So it's like really
how the movie's going.
So it's just kind of just having fun with that and like not taking that too seriously, like as a band page, because also it's like an opportunity to have fun with like even just the concept of being a band and stuff like that.
We're just beginning the first track, Places, everyone is how it begins. And so there's purposefully not full sentences. There's as general a scene and as general a cast, places, everyone, as possible.
It's purposefully the first one on the record because it's kind of like, if you're setting up a scene in a movie or something like that, and like you're, I don't know, directing something, it's be like places, everyone, everyone get to your places, get to your marks. It is a little abstract on purpose, and like it's not necessarily like spoon-fed to you what is going on, but then it becomes a little bit more relatable when there's a person injected into the narrative, like at the end.
So it strikes me that in the second part of the song, rather than having like a really clear sense of one specific character, there is more like a very particular interpersonal dynamic.
That's
I'm not your
true.
doctor and you're not nearly patient enough.
And the second part of the song is kind of about exploring the agency of a person. Maybe somebody might be coming to you like, what do I do, or something like that, and it's just like it's kind of even denying the answerability to some of those things. Like it's just like, okay, so this is the situation, right? And so what do you do? And then it's kind of being like, well, I don't know. But you're being very impatient about like we all want answers to everything. Like that's the problem. What's the answer? Kind of stuff like that. That's kind of what it's about.
As we transition into the second song, in this one, there does seem to be much more of a specific sense of place.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the name of the song. And also a more fleshed out character. There's the first person used throughout.
That one's like more of a personal kind of like exploration of themes and things that keep happening, and me recognizing that and exploring it through the song.
Something I love about this song is what's happening sonically when the lyrics are "Mercy me," it's suddenly perfectly obvious, and then at that moment or just after that moment, I feel like there is this relatively sudden sonic shift.
That sonic shift is, it's suddenly perfectly obvious, so then there is the sudden shift, and then this is kind of the realization of like, I should do something, I should change your mind, tell you I love you, and if I say it, I'll mean it. And it's like, but it's also like kind of pushing into that and being like, I don't know if I mean it, but if I say it, then I'll mean it, and like I'll mean it.
Something else that struck me as interesting throughout is the placement of the vocal phrasing, especially in places. There are multiple U's.
Yes, that's true.
And the phrasing is different.
Right. And they overlap, and
which is a really interesting stylistic feature, I think. And then in Weird Beach, there's this more kind of conversational voice like lower in the mix.
Yeah, Brian is doing that. I'm singing it, but he's like saying it. Yeah. And it's supposed to kind of make it more like this is a conversation between two people, and it's kind of bringing that out, and it's kind of taking away the stilted nature of like singing it and being like, this is something that somebody is saying to somebody else.
So you referenced your interest in philosophy before. Is there kind of like an intellectual reason why we have the more abstract and then the more particular and intimate?
In a sense, it's not even necessarily like trying to do it, but there is kind of within myself and my own kind of my philosophical thinking and even spiritual self, there's kind of conflict in it. And like some of the philosophical things that I really play around with and think about a lot can be like, it can be about determinism and nihilism. Those are kind of like detached and like they can be that way, but there's also like a full side of a person that is an emotional being. Like even if you really subscribe to all this like deterministic thinking and stuff like that, and maybe like nothing mattering, and if you're just gonna kind of distill things down to their simplest parts or whatever,
there's still the experience of being the nihilist.
Exactly, there's still the
being
experience.
The determinist.
And I think that conflict for me, it's like very important. And something that I think about and all the time, and so like the music reflects that absolutely. You know, if you do think some of these things, there's maybe even an emotional fallout to that, and emotional consequence to that, and kind of and dealing with that. Music is a great place for me to kind of put those thoughts and feelings together and merge them and kind of explore them together at the same time.
The song Heavy Bones is one which, you know, really draws attention to, you know, the human body, and it opens with the image of heavy bones sinking easily. The idea of heavy bones is unusual. And then it's made doubly strange by being spelt out. And HEAVYB.
And it's going across words.
ONE.
If you're just like listening to it, like you might not pick up what's being spelled because it's spelled so oddly in those like sets of three, and that was just not how you would spell that out for somebody if you're like spelling it.
So what's going on there?
So Heavy Bones is one of the more abstract songs on the record for sure. The idea of heavy bones is a little bit like your body. It's very like your body is kind of animated by your spirit, and your body would just kind of like sink if it weren't for like your human spirit that animates it and keeps it going and keeps it from deteriorating. And you know, like if you didn't have this human spirit and whatever, it would just sink into the ground and become, you know, nothing. And it's so.
It would not be animated.
It would not be animated, and it would just fall it would succumb to gravity and be destroyed in a sense. But there's also something really mechanically true about like that's the fate that we're all going to kind of go to eventually, for sure. But I didn't want to be very obvious with that.
The final lyric is, but you ain't never going back. And something that I love most about the song then is that it's cyclical and it does go back.
Totally it does.
To the beginning. And to the fun, high energy.
But it's different though. The thing is, like, it does come back, but it comes back in a slightly different way. So, like, it's not the same coming back. Like, the riff isn't the same. It's a different kind of articulation of what's going on. And it's like almost like this Morse code kind of riff instead of at the beginning where it's like more this frantic thing. And so, like, it does come back thematically in a way, but it's like not the same, you know?
It's like Heraclitus, like, it's a different river.
Yes, absolutely,
no two experiences are the same.
Absolutely. That's a great insight, because that's exactly kind of the intention of why. Like, we could have gone back to the same riff at the beginning, and would have been cool because it's a cool riff. I like the riff, you know.
You have to go to another show.
And then you can hear the riff.
Beginning. Overdue has an equally interesting ending. Insofar as it's sudden, so this is long overdue, and then there's a sudden kind of stop. So I like how time is being played with there, and there's simultaneously this sense that something didn't stop in time.
Yeah.
And then, but the song itself does the opposite.
Yes, it stops.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack even in this song. That song is, at the end of the day, about when my dad died of cancer, which is a while ago now. But it's still, you know, it's something. I was close with my dad, and it's a thing that casts a long shadow on a person's life. And on the one hand, I am very grateful to have had, you know, a father experience that was really wonderful, and he really cared and really demonstrated that, and which was great, and a lot of people don't get to have that, so I'm thankful for that. But also that kind of makes the loss of it especially devastating. So the song is about kind of that end of life experience that I was having with my dad, and kind of going through that. And he had a stroke, and he was aphasic, which meant he couldn't communicate, which is really difficult because there was no warning that was going to happen. Like, it's kind of like the last conversation we had that he could participate in had already happened, and we didn't even know that, you know? So the song is a bit about, like, this is long overdue, you know, like, and I'm not sure I'm ready, you know? So there's not a lot of lyrics in it, but it's really trying to kind of deal with the brevity and the immediacy of, like, the feelings of what that is, and kind of cutting away the fat and not saying more than needs to be said about it. Like, what's important in the song is like the emotional truth of what's happening and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's concern within the song about losing something by saying too much.
Yeah, and
don't say it, you might make it worse.
Yeah, save your strength, don't say it. And there's a lot of, I feel like those, like, lines are, I'm not, you know, it's not like this song is called "My Dad Died of Cancer" and it sucks, you know. The song is, like, kind of purposefully keeps the details of it out, because I feel like the experience of it speaks to a lot of different situations, and could speak to a breakup, or speak to, like, other situations where there's kind of a loss of a person around and stuff like that.
I feel like that can speak to other moments in the record that are about speaking. If I speak and say I love you, then that makes it the case, perhaps, or creates a situation. But perhaps an alternative is not to speak, and not to kind of confuse things by these cerebral concerns like, oh, this has been said, what does that mean? And instead, there is emotion there, and there is a real bond, and just don't let dialogue get in the way of recognizing the authenticity of what's there.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, and that kind of, that idea of, of that way of interpretation of reading it was certainly, like, kept in there, and, like, kind of written to have that in there too. Yeah, that's an excellent observation, like, for sure.
The final track is Decimal. Again, thinking about decimal placement being everything. So with the system, the decimal placement system, so everything is in, like, we're thinking about value, and we're thinking about ordering things.
Yes, absolutely.
Assigning value and creating order within a specific system.
Decimal is a song that kind of does put together a lot of the themes in a way that makes sense. Like, the verses are about, like, I'm talking about, like, domesticated animals and how we maybe aren't that different, and not caring, I'm in love, like, it doesn't matter that I might just be, like, an animal. And in the second verse I'm talking about, like, the chemistry of romance and the neurons firing and stuff, which really gets into kind of, like, even us, like, a sense of agency, and, like, is you know, it is free will a thing,
determinism,
determinism and stuff like that. And, like, but then in the second half of each verses, I was like, well, I don't care, I'm in love, which is, like, the human side.
Speaking from the human. This is my lived experience. I don't care if it can be explained by science. It's my experience. I'm in love. And so, like, the decimal placement on all of those kinds of scenarios, in, like, kind of a metaphorical sense, like, where you place the importance of things, it's everything. It's kind of like the makeup of your life and what's important and stuff like that. And this is a lot of stuff to kind of try to bring together into one place. Like, on the one hand, it is kind of like a love song. All this stuff might be true, but I don't care, like, I'm in love. It's interesting the difference between the I'm in love here and I'm in love in weird beat.
Yes,
because
right.
that's a tentative, like hypothetical.
Yes, it's reserved.
What would happen
yeah.
if I were to say this?
Yeah.
Would it be true? And here it's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm in love.
exactly.
It's like a triumphant. Like,
exactly.
I know, I live this, and this is true.
Yes, and none of this stuff, all this stuff could be true, but that doesn't matter. Like, I'm in love, so like great. It might be in love because like neurons are firing in the exact sequence that they need to, and a cascading rush of hormones are happening.
Right.
But it doesn't change that that's happening, and that's how I feel, and like that is
and then I
true.
feel good about it.
And I feel good about this. Yeah, like I don't care about that. I am in love, and
that's the focus.
Yeah,
that's what we value. Paying attention to. Yeah. It's hard to be in love when you're alone. Is an interesting focus.
Yeah.
Especially in the song, which does. So I feel like I don't care, I'm in love. There is more. Like the guitar is more. It's like thrashing of the guitar.
Yeah.
So it's less kind of what's the right adjectives? There's less kind of whereas in the riff, for example, in the pulling on pulling off and stuff on Heavy Bones. Is really precise and complex. Like there. In the moment in Decimal when I don't care, it is more carefree. I think the music is more carefree.
Yes.
It's not as difficult to play.
Yeah.
And it's more kind of
well,
like...
some of those chords are kind of weird jazzy chords. To be honest. But
easy for me to That's what I was listening to.
But no, I mean, you're totally right. It is more, it's less methodical and just kind of like playing the chords, and this is the chord, and I don't care. Like, and there's these lush chords that are just about that.
Well, that moment in the song.
Yeah.
But then, how does that moment relate to other moments? Perhaps particularly the recognition it's hard to be in love in this other context.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to be in love when you're alone, and it's there's a couple ways like you could look at it as kind of like there is a tonal shift in the song right there, and if it's read kind of as the love song, that's kind of where like it falls apart, and maybe you're seeing it as like. It's an unrequited love. You might be in love, but you're alone. Like you're like.
I suppose it's possible. It is possible, I suppose, to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I've experienced that. Love somebody and the feelings not reciprocated, which is fine. That's just a part of the human dynamic.
I've experienced that too.
Yes.
I think you probably have also.
Tune into our next. We're gonna get real deep into that. Yeah, but it can be read as that sort of thing, which is absolutely possible. I think everybody's kind of experienced some dynamic of that. Maybe it's not even just like full blown, like I'm in love with this person, they don't love me, which is happens. But it can also be like I have this huge affection for this person, but they don't feel that towards me, and I'm alone with that feeling. It's not. But the feeling's still there. Like it doesn't just because they do or do not feel it doesn't mean it isn't there anymore.
Yeah. It's simultaneously easy and hard to be in love when you're alone.
Yes.
So it's hard as in like it's not a nice experience.
That's true.
But it's easy as in like it happens all the time.
Yes, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think what the other way to kind of read it is with the more kind of philosophical kind of thing is that like in a sense, if you're looking at all of these, like I'm kind of painting this picture of like calculating the chemistry of romance and domesticated animals and how we're very similar. And there's something very lonely in that. Like then we are just kind of like subject to the whims of our bodies and the influences that are around us, and you're kind of like alone with that. You're the thing that's alone with that, and it's the
person who's doing that is certainly alienated from perhaps a lot of the rest of the animal kingdom by virtue of having that reflection.
Yes, well, sure, yeah, absolutely, right, yeah. So it kind of speaks to maybe like we do have these relationships and stuff, but maybe in a kind of a certain sense we are kind of alone. Even we can be in loving relationships with people, but we're alone with our thoughts, and we have our own. Like I can never know exactly what it's like to be you or things like that, and there's kind of a loneliness that goes along with that, and that's from the philosophical side. That's kind of what that part of the song speaks to, and how it is hard to be in love with that kind of truth. I'm not trying to go too deep into like the philosophy of it in the song. Like I do, that exists in there, and that's like kind of the intention. But it's like when the song moves on from there, it doesn't like sit in that pocket of that kind of philosophical kind of thing. It kind of goes more into like kind of the personal thing, and it's a moment of being like the next lyric is just like, with thoughts that leave you lost and out of hope, and like that's a human experience of maybe going through the loneliness that we're talking about, and really revisiting the humanness of it. And the last line for me, and the intention is that it kind of brings those things together with like, I'm doing my best to pretend that this isn't happening. Like all of this, like maybe it is the neurons that are doing it, and I, like, how does that serve me in my like life when I'm like being in love and having passions and stuff? It doesn't necessarily serve me all that well to always be in that space. So like I might be experiencing love or affection with somebody, or like, or being really excited about writing a song or something like that. And if I get too wrapped up in like, well, it's just neurons firing and it's just dominoes falling and doing that stuff, then like
there's one way of explaining what's happening that might stop the thing that's happening.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things. Absolutely, yeah.
And like, it's not an untrue explanation, but sometimes it's not helpful.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the point exactly of just, it's like those things, I do think those things, and I would the intellectual side of me loves to argue and posit those ideas with people.
Yeah, and explain things. It's helpful to explain things.
Absolutely, but not in every context does it serve the situation. Like being in love, for example, that's not a situation that needs that kind of lens to look at it.
But this song I like that the song is arguing with itself, because at the end, so it's recognizing these things, and then other parts of the song, like, I don't care.
Yes.
I'm in love.
Yes.
It's reminding
itself. Like, because there is that internal conflict in me all the time of like thinking about things and even rationalizing things, and like this person like hurt my feelings. Why did that happen? I like deconstruct it in like a rational way. Sure. But then at the end of it, it's like, well, they still hurt my feelings. My feelings are still hurt. That doesn't take away that stuff. So there's always kind of that thing going on in my brain, and probably a lot of us, like there's in some sense that conflict between those two things, our emotional selves and our logical selves.
Yeah, on that abstract level, I would say places everyone, everyone in every place that's happening. But, and then so we're left at the end with the refrain, do my best to pretend this isn't happening. As the EP draws to a close, why is that the note on which it ends? And is that the note on which it ends? Because there's still like music beyond that.
Right. Well, it does circle, like it kind of sets it up for like kind of the places I feel like to restart the EP. Not that people do that or are going to, but if you were to do it, it does create a kind of a cyclical balance.
I noticed that. My iTunes was just playing it on repeat, and I thought, this works.
Yeah, right. And there's,
good job, iTunes.
But also, I think what's interesting, moving forward, we're going to write more EPs that are under this umbrella, and we've already got like our next songs. Like we're working on it right now. Sure. Our next batch of songs for our next EP, and the songs that we have written come right out of this song, like directly out. Like we wrote it like this goes out from this song, and our intention is maybe a little bit ambitious, but I think we can do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
But
that's the attitude.
We're gonna do. We have like, I think it's 3 or 4 songs. This is gonna be a little bit shorter, but a lot more frenetic, and like, and it's kind of faster paced, and all the songs bleed into each other. Like right after this happens, and then this happens. And if you could listen to it as one song, or it's going to be like the 3 or 4 songs. It'll probably be like parceled out that way. But the intention though is that we're going to record the whole thing front to back, and just in one take. And
well, you did it you've done it 5 times with these songs.
Yeah,
short
right.
songs.
Yeah. So like this was kind of like a great exercise to do it. Some of these songs are kind of long, and but this is a little bit more ambitious. We're talking about like basically doing like this whole EP without stopping, and just like if we mess up, 5 minutes in, then it's like, oh, start again. But that'll just become like our job to like practice that and work on it. But I think that's going to be the really cool follow up to this. So it kind of sets up the for our next EP what's going to happen. So I don't even necessarily think, I almost think of this as more of like a chapter break and less like the end of an EP or a work. It's like this is like chapter 1 and then chapter 2 is going to happen and kind of pick up right where that left off.
Yeah. So for the time being, we have to make do with just playing this EP on repeat. But in the future, it can flow nicely into EP2, which is one take.
Thank you so much, Simon, for having me. I really appreciate your time, and thank you.
You're very welcome. This has been Back to the City. I'm Simon Calder, and we'll see you at Mortimer's on Friday, May 25th.